Hey guys, welcome back to Trekyards. As always, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Cockins and guest. Bad guest. He's only going to give good answers this week.
I'll be good. I'll be good. Don't do it again, please.
That's not up to us.
I got the button over here.
Hurts, man. Wow.
As you guys can see, we have the incredible Doug Drexler joining us today, and we are going to be talking a bit about Enterprise and the early days of Enterprise, getting the show off the ground and some of the early ideas and concepts that you guys had.
Because the fact is, how do you design pre-TOS, but so pre-TOS, to still feel futuristic to now, but pre to what we saw, and pre to all the other iterations, especially going off the latest iteration of Trek? How do you then go to the earliest iteration of Trek? So, Doug, you were very influential in the NX and a lot of those sort of art decisions. So, what was your sort of initial thought on how do you make truly retro yet canon Trek?
Well, you have to come to kind of a mid-ground between what we saw in TOS and what we saw in the original series. So really, the NX was pushed more towards today, as far as the consoles and technology and stuff like that. Although, honestly, we could have pushed it much, much further. People would say, "Oh, that's more." I know that people would look at that and say that we've made it more futuristic than TOS. What's wrong with us? I mean, for instance, by then you're going to have implants that put HUDs around your head, and you're not going to need all those consoles and stuff. I wish that we would. You can't really do that in the Star Trek universe prior to Next Generation. If you want to have all that really, sweet technology that we know they're going to have in 50 years, not even 300, you've got to do a show that takes place after everything that we saw, like Next Generation. If you go backwards from there, if you do a prequel, like, say, Discovery, and you do more advanced technology, it doesn't fit. I've always, not to go off on a tear here, but I always thought that if you're going to do another Star Trek show, it's really important that you push it for the futuristic technology. That's what original Star Trek was all about. People look at it today and say, man, they had such vision. How did they ever know? But basically, it wasn't really incredible vision. It was just smart. Gene and company looked at stuff that was being done today that was beyond it was more like 50 years. All the stuff that we're seeing now on Star Trek is not 300 years in the future. It's 50 years in the future. This is foremost in my mind. Seeing what J.J. Abrams and company and the new TV shows have done with Star Trek, I really wish that they had decided to go 100 years beyond Picard. Then you're not stepping on any kind of continuity. And for me, continuity is one of the things that has given Star Trek its incredible mythology that hangs in there and continues to be beloved. When I came in, we actually tried to get them to do a Daedalus class ship, with the sphere, the early Matt Jeffries design. Fans would love that. They totally would love it. They love anything that works with continuity, and I do too, and I'm a fan. But the studio, and it really, as far as I know, it really was all the way up to the top, that they wanted the ship to be recognizably an Enterprise, which means you can't throw the saucer away. And I understand that. I totally do understand it. I think that I wish we could have done that. We also, I think it was for the what was the show with the colony ship in the first season? It was Conestoga. We put forward a DY 500 ship for that. We thought that would have been freaking awesome, and the fans would have done handstands to see DY 500. But with with the types of visual effects that we could do. You could scrape right by it and it would look fantastic. But I think it was Peter Lorson said it looked like a pencil. So, I think that sometimes it's really funny how, well, it looks like a pencil I almost said Trump, can trump continuity and plugging into the history that the show has. For me, either you have someone who doesn't really, we're doing our Star Trek, we don't care what they did before, or they don't understand the lore of the show, or not so much the lore of the show, but to understand the audience, the fan base, and that fantastic continuity and showing respect to the stuff that's been loved previously earns a lot of cred. The fans love that. So it's a shame that we couldn't do it that way. I think the NX turned out great, and it's very logical, I think. It's very much like an Enterprise. Anybody would know it by looking at it. Even my Aunt Petunia would know what it was. And then the idea that eventually it becomes a full-fledged starship with a secondary hull. I just love that evolution, that idea of the ship evolving. When you first see it, it's kind of a tadpole. It hasn't gotten its wings yet. And then after a few years, it becomes,
Now, I guess jumping off that, was it mandated originally that it was supposed to be the Enterprise and not another ship that was just an early explorer? Because looking at TNG, there is no NX on the wall in the conference room. It's not in that lineage of Enterprises.
Well, obviously there's a ripple in time that caused it to be erased.
And I thought they were going to go.
The show, when I was on stage, the NX was on the wall. I can't help it. I don't know what happened. I think we have to call in the temporal. No. At that point there was the idea of the NX. No one knew about it. But for me, the ships on the wall doesn't make it law that it didn't exist. I'm pretty sure there were other Enterprises that didn't make it on that wall.
Yeah, the ring ship and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
So going back, obviously you're starting a new show. You hope it's going to run for many years. You're starting a new design aesthetic. It's a prequel. There's obviously an art design team. They create the look. But how much of the production guys above that, the leads of the entire show, how influential were they in deciding where the technology was going to be? When you say prequel, was it literally left up to you and the art team to say, right, producers, we're going to have phase count of little phases that look sort of different. We're going to have little, how much what did they say you have to have, and then it was your job to sort of retcon an old version, and or was it very much freeing of you design the aesthetic, you design where we are in this timeline, or where was that line, and what was pre-asked for?
Well, it all starts off with meetings, going through the script, talking about where we are in time, and usually it'll be a pretty brief discussion while going through the script, and it would be up to Herman to go back and return with what he thinks is a good idea.
So the scripts were all written before anything was done, or just the pilot? Or?
Oh yeah.
So the writers invented this pre-world, and you just had to fill in the gaps, because again, that's a lot of power then to the writers. It wasn't the producers that were deciding; it was the writers that were saying, "Hey, this is the first Klingon discussion."
Yeah, but Rick has to think it's okay. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that Rick and Brandon cracked the first 10 episodes themselves. That's my memory.
Okay, so then you take those scripts, and then so it was Herman that said, we're doing this art direction, or who was the first guy to suggest, let's do a submarine in space and make that the aesthetic?
I don't know if it was Herman or not, or if it was Rick Berman. There were connections to the Navy because, Star Trek is a favorite, especially on board the Enterprise, the aircraft carrier. So I went down to Top Gun myself to do research on stuff for Paramount. So I don't know whose idea it was, but I mean, that was one of the early, let's go take a look at what we want to do is take what we have today and just spin it up a little more. You know, you can't go 300 years in the future. Guys, in 300 years, if we're still here, you won't even leave your, well, you know, I kind of did it on the Enterprise J. You know, you don't really have to leave your quarters. You could be on the bridge. Your avatar's on the bridge. That means you're on the bridge. You know, who the hell knows what it's going to be like? That's so far in the future.
Although there's an interesting debate online, and it works backwards and forwards, you know. And in your opinion, Doug, obviously the guy that was one of the guys that led the Less Writing campaign that got more Trek and was on many iterations of Trek, some fans are arguing that Star Trek still is a look at our future, and some fans are saying Star Trek is the Star Trek universe, and then you extrapolate back from the Trek universe and you extrapolate forward from the Trek universe, or do you believe that it is us pushing forward? So as if we suddenly gained holograms in 2 years' time, then NX would still be super, you know, you have to retcon NX to have moving holograms through the ship.
NX is primitive compared to where we're really going to be by then.
Yeah, so where are you in that argument? Is it?
It is. But, and we knew that then. But you have to take into consideration what we were looking at on the original series. You know, if we can't go super science futuristic, we except for certain things like transporter. But if we have all kinds of heads-up stuff happening, and you know, you're doing the Minority Report thing, they're going to say, well, what did they do? Throw all that away? That's why I say you must leave the time from Picard all the way back to Enterprise and TOS and all those shows. That block of time should be immutable. That's history. And you work within that universe, but it's affected by what we know in real life. But you've got to fold it in to that Star Trek universe. They should be moving ahead another 50 years, 100 years, you know. And then you could go crazy and the fans won't mind. They'll be 100% for it. They'll love it. And Star Trek, which had always been like this oracle of technology, that's really should always be at the base of Star Trek, the foundation of the show.
But speaking of Enterprise, I know since you're the designer of the ship, exactly how much influence did you have on the interior of the ship, like the bridge stations and monitors and that kind of look?
Not really a lot. I mean, beyond what, you know, like Mike and I walking by and putting in our 2 cents. And saying whether we liked something or we thought that something didn't make, you know, that kind of influence. But I was just doing the ship alone. And of course, the look of the ship was really the other way around. The ship was influenced by the sets that were being built. You know, you'll see it in the colors. You'll see it in the, you know, in the architecture. The inside and the outside go together really well. They work really well together. As a matter of fact, I think that that gray that was used throughout the ship actually had a hint of rose in it. Herman put just a little bit of rose into it. And that early versions of the NX had a slight hint of, just like the interior, a hint of rose to it. Then when it went to visual effects, and really Dan Curry was mostly, you know, working with the visual effects guys. And of course he had to take whatever they were doing, and Rick Berman had to look at it. I mean, for all I know, you know, Rick might have said, "Gee, Rosie, can you push that more towards a colder, you know, metallic gray?" That could have happened. I don't know. It's kind of, but to be perfectly honest, the way it looks on your TV screen, depending on how your television is tuned, is what the ship looks like to you, you know, so.
Yeah, that's true.
So, question, as a fan yourself, obviously, when, I guess, going through the production design of the NX-1 and that whole era, was there any technology and way they were introducing things that you felt as a fan was a bit, okay, that's too advanced, or we should really be jumping that ahead a bit, you know, even if you were being asked to design it? Were there lines for you as well there?
Nothing I know there's plenty of fans that will disagree with me. There was nothing that I found really offensive. And it was hard to have really offensive things because Herman had been designing the show for years. He had a good understanding of the world. I was there. Michael Kuda was there. Denise was there. It was hard to get too far off the path. I think that we got complaints from fans about, having the monitors and having, switches and things like that, because they were so, the TOS, we had the acrylic gummies for buttons, so it's like, that's so primitive. How come they're using, for me, it was the other way around. I thought that the jelly beans and stuff, they weren't like anything I'd seen before, and as a matter of fact, I'd really never seen them anywhere, anywhere in the real world. Those were beyond our understanding. We didn't know how those things work. Do you massage them? Can you do this to them? Who knows? That's what I love about those. They make you ask questions. That was the beauty of the original series, because they couldn't afford to go out and get surplus or buy switches and stuff like that. They had to be a little more stylized and clever.
Yeah.
In a way, almost theatrical. Look, in the original version of Court Martial, outside, Commodore Mendez, right, his windows, those cardboard cutouts that were obviously cardboard cutouts, obviously. Because of the stylization of the show, you could go a little more towards theatrical. There was always a theatrical element to the original series Star Trek, where you could do far out things like the jelly bean buttons or have cardboard cutouts outside the window. It's done in such a clever, stylized way that when you watch it, you don't feel like they think they don't know those are cardboard. Do you know what I mean? They know, and and you accept it because everything they're doing is so cool, and they're really pushing, the boundaries for science fiction television at the time. So you accept some of those things. I thought that we did a really good job. The bridge is really wonderful on the NX. It's a favorite bridge. It looks really functional. But if you look at it, you'll see the technology and the control surfaces and stuff are closer to what, we have today. It's more, we know they wanted to give the feeling that could be your grandchild, or something like that. If you look at the readouts over the seasons, Mike in the graphics started adding the little colored squares. Didn't have them at first. It wasn't because he didn't think of it. He wanted to pepper them in.
Firmware updates, guys. You need to have them, and they keep systems running tippity top.
Yeah.
So final question, Doug. Kind of, if you can take your mind out of the I designed it perspective, it being such a prequel, because like you say, it really is a continuation of our world, very slowly moving to TOS. Do you think if you took it out of context and took out the monitors and took out the Star Trek teeny things that link, is it enough of its own unique style to actually be not Star Trek? If you look at the corridor, does the corridor say Star Trek inside it? Does the bridge say Star Trek? Or is it the other little things that make it Star Trek? Is it so well designed as its own unique future us that it is devoid, actually, in a sense, from the Star Trek, but in a good way?
Well, you almost can't do a space naval show without it. Star Trek kind of owns that, even though other people do it. It always comes back around to Star Trek. Of course, Star Wars, then again, that's something else. It's its own thing. But I think that, there's plenty of things about the show. It's highly influenced by TOS, the design work. To me, you go in engineering and you could see that it's very much a Star Trek design, and we were even pushing it towards TOS, the split level, the idea is that eventually the warp core went under the floor. At the end of the wall is those screens that are there. It's very plugged into Star Trek.
I'd have to agree with you. If you were asking me that question, Samuel, I'd say absolutely it looks Star Trek. It doesn't feel like its own thing. There's so many little nods to different things we had seen in TOS.
That's why I'm asking the question, because I think you could do both. I think it's interesting.
You know, I always felt that when we were doing Star Trek, it was about Star Trek. It wasn't us trying to show that we were smarter or more creative or more original, and that we looked at what they did and said, well, those are obviously mistakes. Those are things we don't want to repeat again. You know, for us, Star Trek was like the little baby that we were taking care of, you know.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug, for speaking to us about all that. You did a fantastic job on Enterprise. Everyone did. So thank you for that and your love for Star Trek and hitting me with Thor's hammer. That's really appreciated.
And we have more topics I might talk to you about very, very soon.
Absolutely.
You know where to find me. Hey, everybody out there in fandom, you know, we all come from the same place. All got the same DNA, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So. Okay, till next time.
Until next time, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check us out on Facebook. Always lots of great discussions going on there. Plus, if you subscribe, you'll get more Doug Drexler and other special guests as well.
Don't threaten them. How are you going to get people to watch if you threaten them like that?
That's not threatening them.
So until next time, guys, here's Captain Foley.
He's Commander Calkins. And that other guy, that's... I don't know. 5 Quatloos on the newcomer, Doug Drexler.
Ah, yes. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for calling, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, cool. See you guys later.